friends. My name is Kate Ritchie Sexton. I'm a civil celebrant, and it is a privilege to be here as we celebrate the life of Glenda Eileen Bennett. I thank you for being here to celebrate Glenda's life and to say goodbye to her in a loving and a meaningful way. Sadly, Glenda passed away on Tuesday, the 26th of January 2021 at the St John of God Hospital here in Ballarat. Our service is an important opportunity to outwardly express love and gratitude for Glenda as we take some time to commemorate her life, which has spanned 73 years. We come together today with a range of emotions. In the coming weeks and the coming months, those emotions will be ever-changing. The event of death unites us in a way that perhaps no other human experience does. It reminds us of the fragility of our relationships. It reminds us of the special and the unique way which we relate to those people who have crossed our pathway throughout life. As we gather together, each of us are at different stages on our own journey, hoping that we too might achieve a long and full life. Each of our paths are varied, and we each look at life in quite different ways. However, there's one thing that each of you have in common. Your lives have been impacted, influenced, and touched by the life of Glenda. So we're here this morning so that in our own way we can express our sincere love and admiration for her, and hopefully so that we can bring some comfort to everyone who is left saddened and heartsore as a result of Glenda's passing. When we share a time for the remembrance of a special person, we recognise that our lives are interrelated and that life is composed of many facets, from birth and throughout our entire life experience, right up until we take our final breath. Being here today is yet another element of that journey, a meaningful experience of love and of friendship for Glenda and her family. It's at a time like this too that we think of the great debt that we owe to the past, to our parents, our grandparents and prior generations, to each of the men and women who have gone before us, how each of them have contributed something to our lives now, something great or small, which benefits us. Glenda's life experience has been one which has included all of the ups and downs that you might expect. However, she was very fortunate to enjoy a valued and close bond with her siblings and her parents, and spending time with her siblings in later years has been a great comfort to her and one which she has appreciated so much. I do hope that when you leave here this morning that you will take with you a real sense of having shared in a special day for a lady that did life her own way, no matter what. She was a wonderful wife, mother, nurse, carer and friend, and it is at a time like this that we stop to pause for a little while and reflect. We share the time for recollection of experiences with the personal relationship that you've shared with Glenda as we celebrate her life, and we hope that you might find some comfort in knowing that what has been is yours to keep, and that Glenda will always be a part of your life. For 22 years, Glenda and Jeff shared a marriage full of mutual love and respect for each other until Jeff sadly passed away 10 years ago. Glenda's been a loved mother, stepmother, and welcoming mother-in-law to Andrea and Rick, Dean and Pam, Kiralee and Bob and Brian. Glenda has been an adored grandmother to her 7 grandchildren, Luke, Tim, Ali, Michael, Sarah, Tammy and Shane, and great-grandmother to their children. Glenda was a loved daughter to Annie and James Keating. She was a treasured sister to her 7 siblings, Marion, Nola, Margaret, Lorraine, Leslie, Morris and Jimmy. Sadly, Leslie and Morris are no longer with us. Glenda has been a dearly loved auntie to her many nieces and nephews and a valued friend and work colleague over the years. Each of you here have been amongst some of the most important people in Glenda's life, and so we take this time today not only to farewell her, but just as importantly to reflect on that unique connection which has been shared. And although today is a day of sadness for you, it will also be a day of wonderful memories that were made possible by having Glenda in your lives. So it's fitting to say that Glenda lived an interesting life through incredibly interesting times. She's experienced a world which has changed quite substantially. There's been vast advancements in technology and a great deal of change in societal values. The past 73 years have in many ways been quite an extraordinary time to have lived and seen such transitions. Being born in 1947 meant that Glenda witnessed many things. World War II had barely been over for 2 years when Glenda was born in Kerrang, where she lived with her family, until moving to Ballarat in her younger years. I'm told Glenda was a rebel from a very early age. She became well versed at just disappearing unannounced, rarely telling anyone her plans. It wasn't uncommon for her to take her younger sister Lorraine on the train to Melbourne, where they would attend Festival Hall to see bands play. When the Beatles came to Australia in 1974, Glenda was 17 at the time, she and a girlfriend decided that they'd take the train to Melbourne to see the Fab Four. They each told their parents that they were staying at each other's house that night. And that would have been a perfectly good plan, except for they managed to get themselves on television. So their cover was kind of blown. However, Glenda, more often than not, she just did what she wanted, when she wanted, with stories that she even took off to Perth on one occasion. Glenda used to dye her hair blonde in her younger days, and this too backfired one time after going to the swimming pool and having her hair turn green from the pool chemicals. By the 1960s, of course, rock and roll was in full swing. And there were the local dances, which were the hub of the social interaction of those times, and soon Glenda met Peter Hayward, a farmer from Beaufort. They met at a local dance here in Ballarat. By 1967, they were married and Glenda moved to Beaufort, where they lived on the farm. She'd already completed her nursing studies by this time, and she worked as a state-enrolled nurse at the Beaufort Hospital. In 1968, they welcomed their first child, Dean, and the following year, Andrea was born. Sadly, Glenda and Peter's relationship wasn't to be, and they separated in 1972, with Glenda and Andrea moving to Queensland. Glenda soon met Doug Jones, who owned a corner store in Redcliffe, and their relationship developed, and soon they began running the store together. Glenda was now the proud stepmum to Brian and Kiralee, Doug's children. By the early 1970s, they moved to a farm in Bawpole, which I had never heard of, Andrea, until you mentioned it, and that's a good 200 kilometres or so north of Redcliffe, and they grew pawpaw and tomatoes, amongst other things. They continued this for a few years, and after around 7 years together, sadly they too separated. Interestingly, Brian and Kiralee stayed with Glenda and Andrea at the time. Glenda worked on other farms and she was the cleaner at the local school. She was always a very hard worker and she did whatever was necessary to provide for the kids. Andrea told me that when they were growing up, many kids would say that they wished that Glenda was their mum. She was a pretty cool parent. She was very practical and she said things just as they were. There was never a tight rein on the kids, but that didn't mean that you didn't know where the boundaries were or what the expectations were. After a while, Glenda and Andrea returned to Ballarat. Soon Glenda returned to nursing and she gained employment at Nazareth House. Later that same year, she met the love of her life, Jeffrey. In May 1988, they were married in Snake Valley. Glenda was 41 at the time. This was a great pairing. Glenda and Jeff were made for each other, and they were very, very good for each other. Glenda continued working until she was 50. This was a time where her talent and ability for craft really came to the fore. It didn't matter if it was hobby techs or macrame or some other art or craft activity. Glenda had an ability to learn new skills and a sharp attention to detail. And between the two of them, Glenda and Jeff created all kinds of items which they then sold at regular craft markets that they attended. This is something they did for around 10 years, and they made a really wonderful team. Glenda certainly had her own unique way of expressing love. It wasn't her nature to be lovey-dovey or over-emotional. She didn't necessarily like that about herself. However, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we do the best we can despite those. Glenda displayed her care and her love by other methods. She let her actions speak. She was strong-minded, but she was also extremely thoughtful and generous. It's pretty well known that Glenda either liked you or she hated you. There wasn't much of a chance that there'd be an in-between, but if she did like you, she gave you 100% unreservedly. If she could help you, she did it. She was a very practical woman. She did not expect anything in return. Many of her nieces have shared stories of Glenda's generosity over the years. Glenda nursed both of her father and her niece during their illnesses and until their final days. Family meant a great deal to her. Glenda wasn't one to live in the past. She was a very present person. That was her mindset, and she just got on with what needed to be done. She was incredibly proud of the kids and what they'd achieved in life. Not that she would ever actually tell them that, but she would freely tell others, and this information always seemed to make its way back to them. Sadly, Glenda never fully recovered after Jeff's passing. She took this loss very hard. However, she did turn her focus to her garden, which was in many ways her sanctuary and the place that she found peace. She was free to talk to God, to talk to her parents, to talk to Jeff when she was in the garden. Some of you might know that Glenda was quite organised, and she did keep a schedule of her days in a notebook, and many of the planned tasks that she would write down were garden related. I thought I might share these words of comfort appropriately titled My Mother's Garden. My mother kept a garden of the heart. She planted all the good things that gave my life its start. She turned me to the sunshine and encouraged me to dream, fostering and nurturing the seeds of self-esteem. And when the winds and rains came, she protected me enough, but not too much. She knew I'd need to stand up strong and tough. Her constant good example always taught me right from wrong, markers for my pathway that will last a lifetime long. I am my mother's garden. I am her legacy. And I hope today she feels the love reflected back from me. Having said that, I'm now going to warmly welcome Glenda's daughter Andrea to the microphone to share some personal memories with us. Thanks, Andrea.
On behalf of myself, my brother Dean and my sister Curly, I'd like to thank you all for coming to celebrate Mum's life. Yesterday, Curly shared with me the most poignant memory she had of Mum. And as Kate said, when Mum and Curly's father Doug split up, Curly and Brian stayed with us as a family. And Curly remembers distinctly Mum fighting to keep them. basically screaming at Doug, "You're not taking my children." And Mum was fiercely loyal to us kids. And we'll always be grateful for that. When Mum turned 60 years old, I decided to do a scrapbook of her life. This week, while sorting out some of her things, I found that scrapbook and a letter that I wrote to her in it. I'd like to share some of those words with you today, but with a couple of edits. Dear Mum, happy 60th birthday. Wow. A couple of months ago, I decided to undertake the adventure of scrapbooking bits and pieces of your life. I never realised just how blessed I would be doing this. You are a truly wonderful and complex woman. I didn't even scratch the surface with this book, but what a great journey your life has been. I have been so lucky to have been part of some of it. I have 4 favourite photos out of all of these ones. One where you were a small child on the front veranda, dressed up nicely with very clean shoes. I wondered where you were going, looking so pretty, and what games you played as a child and what you thought of life. The second one is you dressed as a fairy. Your innocence in this photo is very striking. Then there is a photo of a young you with blonde hair. And I wonder if this is when you dyed it yourself before it turned green. Finally, on the last page at the bottom left corner, you are sitting sideways, not wearing glasses. And I feel like I am seeing myself looking back at me. During this time, I realised I know about 10% of your life. Isn't it amazing that you can know someone for nearly 40 years, or 50 now, and know so little? I realised how much I admire you and love you. I will always love you because you're my mum, but I like you too, although that was subject to change later on. You're funny, caring, experienced, devoted, hardworking, tenacious, stubborn, bossy, bitchy, irritating, loyal, and capable. There is so much more I could say, but I don't have that much paper. You have a family who loves you, albeit we are all a little bit nuts, as Auntie Margaret would say. Mum, I love you. This has been such a joy to do. I hope you love it as much as I do and enjoy the great milestone in your life. Happy birthday. Thank you for being my mum. It's been a roller coaster ride, as all life is, but it is a privilege and honour to have you as my mum. You are lucky to have Jeff standing by your side for so many years, and that is a great blessing for you both. I really hope you are enjoying these years together now on top of your windy hill and continue to live many more years with peace and joy in your heart. With all my love, your daughter, Andrea Grace. And she would go to live on a few more years with her love, Jeffrey. And when he sadly passed away, Mum moved closer to family here in Wendouree. Mum made a huge impact on many of her family members, which has been very telling in the messages that I've been receiving this week, especially from cousins and the younger generations. Some of the words to describe Mum as being, doing or having are a true mother's love. She worked incredibly hard. And she did things without fanfare. She was an incredible nanny. She was able to really open up Dad, or Jeff, and bring him out of his shell. She was great for advice on the phone, even when you didn't ask for it. She was a great homebrew beer maker. She was very loving and caring. She was my second mum. I have resounding memories of hearing her say, "Shit or get off the pot." They had great times. Auntie Glenda, I love you. Her and Jeff were like a second set of parents. She made a lasting impression on my life. Her phone calls were the highlight of my day. And she was a legendary auntie. And the last one is, I cherish the night we sat up talking, laughing and crying together, and many of us had that. Her impact was mostly private, very personal, direct and practical. She was able to focus directly on you and the task at hand. And she kept up with everyone. Mum definitely made impacts on other people too, especially in her later years with people in the health industry. Her fierce independence would lead her to tell ambulance officers, nurses and doctors to leave her alone, but in much more flowery language that I can't repeat. Mum only did things when she was good and ready. Even as her last days were at hand, her doctor came in to check on her, surprised that she was still going, and he simply said, well, Glenda was always going to do it her way. She was a woman who knew what she wanted, even if it was against the rules. She still did it. The nurse who was with her in the last days said Mum's memory would definitely stay with her. She told me the story where one day the nurses could smell smoke. They sniffed and they followed the smell of the smoke to room 221, Mum's room. It wasn't unusual for older smokers to sneak into the bathroom and try and have a ciggy, but not Mum. When they went in, she was sitting upright in her comfortable recliner, looking like Lady Muck, joyfully puffing away on a homemade ciggy. They said to her, Glenda, you can't smoke that here. She took her last puff and she simply butted it out and said, well, I've finished now. The nurse said Mum was definitely someone who just called a spade, and I think we can all agree with that. She loved her ciggies, her VB beer, her That's Life magazines, her garden, her peace and quiet, her family and space. She also had a very great love of one person in particular, and that was her granddaughter Sarah. Symbolic of their enduring relationship, I will let Sarah have the final words.
I love you, Nanny.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrea. As we remember Glenda today, we're going to take some time to look back on a collection of photographs from throughout her 73 years. If you'd like to look to the television screen now, we'll enjoy those memories. Family and friends, in keeping with Glenda's faith, I invite you to join me now in reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Time shared with special people can impact us in a profound way, and Glenda has had a significant impact on each of your lives. The memories and the stories shared today further reinforce that those who have come to the end of life live on eternally in the hearts and the minds of those who have loved them. Hold on to Glenda in every memory which makes you smile. Continue to speak of her and to celebrate her each day. Glenda's love and your experiences together are permanently imprinted in your memories. Today, as you reflect, although it is the natural course of life, it hurts deeply to have lost Glenda. In reality, it will always hurt to some degree. But I encourage you to use those imprinted memories of Glenda as your comfort and as your inspiration. How can we best honour the memory of someone who we have loved so deeply? We do this by living life to the full, in whatever way that resonates with you. Sometimes living life to the full requires an acknowledgement that it's in the most simple things that we often find the most happiness. The only thing of value that any of us have when we come to the end of our time on earth is a collection of life experiences. Who we've shared those experiences with becomes the most essential element of our time. It's the people who have shared our laughter, supported us in heartache and through challenging times, celebrated our successes, encouraged us through our failures. It's the partner, the children and the grandchildren that we've loved, the parents who have loved us unconditionally, the siblings and the extended family that we've shared an unspoken bond with, the valued friendships that we've nurtured. It's all these things that impact our lives most deeply. Take comfort in knowing that Glenda has shared a happy life with you all, her loving family and friends. And although there is great sadness today, there is a sacredness in tears. Tears are messengers of grief and of love. They allow us to express and to acknowledge emotions and to move forward with hope. For some, there's solace in the heartfelt belief that in time our spirits will reunite once again. And whilst none of us know this for certain, I'm quite sure that most of us would hope for that very thing, that we're reunited with our loved ones who have gone before us, meaning that Glenda is now once again reunited with Jeff and loved ones since past, and importantly, that our goodbye is just for now. Family and friends, I'd like to take a moment on behalf of Glenda's family to thank you again for being here with them today. On their behalf, I also express sincere gratitude to each of the wonderful staff from St John of God Hospital for their genuine and professional care of Glenda, even when she was having a ciggy in her room. We also extend deep thanks to Glenda's sister, Lorraine Stinchcombe, for all of the support that she's given in looking after both Glenda and Andrea through this difficult time, along with Colleen, who's been a faithful and a caring friend. She's looked after Glenda through all of her ups and downs, checking on her daily, helping with shopping and with errands. And this has enabled Glenda to remain independent and at home, and it's given her family such an immense peace of mind, knowing that she wasn't alone in the times that they just could not be there for her. So thank you very much to Lorraine and to Colleen. It's been very deeply appreciated. At the conclusion of our service, we will escort Glenda from the chapel to the awaiting hearse. Later this afternoon, I believe at about 3:30, you're welcome to attend the Whitcliffe Cemetery. Quarter to three now, sorry. So 2:45, out at the Whitcliffe Cemetery. Glenda will be laid to rest there with Jeff. An invitation's been extended to gather at Lorraine's home for a cup of tea between now and then. Okay. There is no more sobering reminder to alert us to the things that are truly important in life than losing someone who we have loved. During our time together, we have reflected on 73 amazing years full of life experiences. As we look back over time, we find ourselves wondering, did we remember to thank you enough for all that you have done for us? For all the times you were by our sides to help and support us, to celebrate our successes, to understand our problems, and to accept our defeats. Or for teaching us by your example the value of hard work, good judgment, courage, and integrity. We wonder if we ever thanked you for the sacrifices that you made to let us have the very best. And for the simple things like laughter, smiles, and the times we shared. If we have forgotten to show you our gratitude enough for all that you did, we are thanking you now. We are hoping you knew all along how much you meant to us. Family and friends, as a unified expression of our love for Glenda, if you're able now, I would ask that you please be upstanding for our final words today. We farewell a deeply loved lady, Glenda Eileen Bennett. Glenda was treasured, and she is loved. Today, her body will be offered back to the earth from where all life comes and to where all life returns. Every day we will remember Glenda with love and with gratitude. May those memories bring warmth and comfort to our hearts, a smile and deep happiness, and let those times be numerous and often. Glenda, we honour your memory and the love that you leave behind in the hearts of your family and friends. Love does not end with dying or leave with the last breath. For someone who you have loved, love goes on forever. Reunited with Jeff, may Glenda rest in eternal peace.